So hello and welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
So I've got three lovely writers, British, all of you, of women's fiction and comedy and lots of other things. So I wondered if you could introduce yourselves first and say what style of book you write. Tell us a little bit about what kind of book. Janie, do you want to start because you arrived first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Janie Millman, and I actually am British, but I live in southwest France and have been living here for the last 10 years. My husband and I run courses in southwest France. We run writing courses, and Rowan and both Jane are our tutors, and we run photography and painting courses. I think I would describe my books. I write contemporary women's fiction, which I know covers a whole gamut of things, but I write with romance. I like to have a heroine, I think, who has confronting certain problems, certain sort of personal problems or social problems. I like to see how she develops through that, how she learns about herself, how she learns about others, sort of coming of age, but doesn't matter what age really, because I think we all continue to learn throughout our whole lives. And I love characters, which drives my agent insane, but I do like introducing a whole range of different rich characters, I hope. So there we go.
Okay. Jane, what can you tell us?
Hi, I'm Jane Wenham-Jones. I'm British too. I have written 10 books. I've just finished my 7th novel, and I've done 3 non-fiction books as well. And I'm also a freelance journalist. I write columns and features and I do a bit of presenting and interviewing like this. When my first novel was published, it was billed as chick lit, and it probably was. And then I got sort of billed as chick lit going on from that, although the subsequent ones aren't really, because the heroines are too old and they have, other sort of families and problems and blah, blah. I tend to write what I know. So each one of my novels is some sort of aspect of my own life, if you like. I wrote one about running a wine bar, because that's what I've done. I wrote one about trashy daytime television and the pitfalls, because I've done a bit of that. So I tend to sort of take scenarios that I know a bit about and then fictionalize them.
Is there a name for chick lit when the heroine gets older? Because that's what I read a lot of.
I think they call it mum lit sometimes, or my book Mum in the Middle was about sort of the squeezed generation, where you're sort of looking after elderly parents and you're looking after adult children. So yeah, they put lit on the end of everything now, don't they?
I mean, I call it women's fiction globally, but I quite often say like Bridget Jones if she was 40 to people, but that's not very snappy. Okay. Rowan, you also billed as chick lit when you started.
You were postponing me. Yes, I'm Rowan Coleman. I started writing chick lit years ago, 20 years ago, when I was a chick. Now I am a woman grown and write what the publishers and bookshops call women's fiction, and I call fiction. And I tend to write very emotional, character-driven contemporary fiction under my own name, or historical detective fiction under my pen name Bella Ellis.
Okay.
Anything else?
I was going to ask, what do you think the market is like for contemporary women's fiction at the moment? Have you kind of noticed any trends? What's selling? What's not? What's being read?
I think there's always a market for a really good story, and it doesn't really matter what the genre is or what's fashionable or what the last million copy bestseller was. It's if there's a story that relates to the reader and they can get swept up in and perhaps see a little bit of themselves reflected back at them in, then there's always a market for that.
And I think people are reading over the last year or so. I think people are really grasping at books to help them through this, you know, terrible times that we've been going through. I think that, you know, I think actually for booksellers and for authors, I think it's been quite a good time for us, because I think people really are appreciating just how much a book can take you away, how much you can, you know, learn from it, how much you can relate to it.
Yeah, sales have apparently been huge. I mean, books have really, really done well, and I think it's that sort of escapism where you can just slump on the sofa and go into a different world has really come into its own during these really difficult times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and choose your escapism as well. You know, some people like to escape into a dark crime novel, and some people like to escape into a gorgeous romance, and either one is just as valid, isn't it? It's whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, absolutely. It's like eating food. It's, you know, whether you're wanting a sort of Michelin star or whether you want bangers and mash. Depends on how you feel, doesn't it?
And yes, and on your tastes. And I think in one of the other conferences they were saying that people are reading a lot of historical fiction to get away from historical romance, to get away a little bit from thinking about grim reality. So, but I'm reading contemporary fiction. So, what do you think are popular settings for women's fiction or comedies at the moment? Have you noticed in your reading or in your friends that people are writing more about Scotland? That's my suggestion. Ireland, Scotland.
My last book on
Cornwall.
tradition at the moment is in Scotland, so yeah, maybe.
Ah.
I think probably for I don't know. I think a lot of friends of mine recently have written. Yes, so probably Italy, Spain, Greece, somewhere that, you know, you can't go to, but you can go to in a book.
Nice idea. Yeah. Jane, do you have any ideas?
I'm afraid I get most of my novels in Yorkshire at the moment, and it's usually very cold and raining, but that's just what I like. So I'm a very strange person. And I quite like bleak, depressing weather. It's very atmospheric.
Yes.
No, I haven't noticed any particularly changed scenarios. I think Janie's right. I think perhaps travel is always popular because people like to read about exotic locations, particularly if they're not even allowed to go round for a coffee with somebody.
There have been a lot of over the last few years, a lot of kind of cafes on beaches as a sort of trend, and sort of, you know, bakeries in bays and stuff like that.
That's been going for a few years, hasn't it? That sort of cupcake cafe sort of idea, and you know.
Yeah. I actually find that very relaxing. I really like, and it's always a big change of life for a city. But I think we have a conference about that, actually, which you will watch in French. Kind of the city person who discovers a new life in a small town near the sea.
Well, I think that's everyone's kind of, you know, people always think that's the dream, isn't it? You escape from the rush hour. Whether you're going to be a sheep farmer in Wales or whether you're going to set up a knitting business in Cornwall or anything, I think it is that sort of, you know, the reality is sadly that probably most of these businesses don't actually work. But when you're reading about it, you want sort of, that's what everyone aspires to, that sort of creativity somewhere else rather than
just dream life. Yeah,
living the good life, absolutely.
Yes, as you say, creativity as well. That's another element, so that's interesting. Yeah. Do you think there is a different voice in British women's fiction, for example, a different voice from American contemporary fiction, or even, I've kind of read a lot of Irish books at the beginning. I mean, I started with May Binchy, so that's how long I was reading. That there was definitely a feeling in the Irish writers. There is something that I can't put my finger on where I'm reading, and sometimes I read a British reader and writer and think, oh, a little bit Irish, but I can't quite say what it is that distinguishes different. Jane, do you have an idea?
Think that there is, yeah, I think Irish writing is quite distinctive, actually. I grew up on a diet of Maeve Binchy too, wonderful. And I think that American and English writing is very distinctive. I find my humour doesn't always travel very well to the States, and I get reviews, you know, complaining about bad language and poor taste sometimes on Amazon.com. And my how-to book, Want to Be a Writer, which did very well in Britain, was sort of met with bemusement in the States because they just didn't get that I was being tongue-in-cheek. So people took it very, very literally. I do sort of find that a little bit. Don't know if I'm being oversweeping. Sorry to our American cousins if you're listening.
Yeah, there definitely is a British sort of ironic, understated, dry sense of humour, I think, and we are quite at home to swearing in our not a lot of our fiction. Although actually, I've given up swearing because my mum just told me off so much that I really only save it up for when it's important, you know, when it's very necessary now, in fiction, not in life.
I think if you're, I think, and also we like the underdog a lot. We're very happy about putting ourselves down, which, you know, they're not so great on in America. But I think with romance, I think, you know, whatever, love is love, isn't it? Wherever you are, and of course the settings and the religion and the culture and the moral conduct are going to be dictated by where you set it, whether it's America, whether it's Israel, whether it's Ireland. But basically, at the end of the day, it's the same. Romance is love. So, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it's the human condition, isn't it? We are all human beings, no matter what our nationality. And I'm always super excited if I get translated into French, because I just assume that the French publishers have really excellent taste, and therefore it must mean that my books are good.
That must be why I haven't been translated into French.
Oh, Jane!
Have you been translated into other languages?
Yes, I say. Sorry.
Have you been translated into other languages yet? Which languages have you?
German, sorry. My books have been translated into quite a lot of the Eastern Bloc countries like Slovenia and Russia, and quite a lot of that sort of Eastern Europe for some reason.
Oh, maybe they like your swearing and and your taste. Yeah, Janie, have you been translated?
No, I haven't. Only in France, which is fantastic for me because, of course, I live here, and that was completely by chance. It was nothing to do with the fact that I lived here, but it has made that the people in the town actually believe now that I'm a novelist.
That you have a job,
rather than who are these strange people that have moved in? She says she's writing, but really, it's been great. And my second book is coming out in the one that I think you've read, Bridget, Sky's the Limit, is coming out.
I've read both of them.
Oh, both of them. Is coming out in October. And my Life's the Drag, Copine d'Abord, is already out, but it's going into mass market publication, which sounds very grand, but it just means sort of supermarket.
Paper book. Paperback. Sorry, paper book.
No, I'd love to be translated into everything else, but I'm a step behind these two. I've written 4 books, but 2 have been published, and one I don't know what's happened to, and the other one's going out on submission next week. So.
Oh. Okay, so you were a late bloomer in that sense.
In so many ways, yeah.
Rowan, how many languages are you in?
I don't know. About 20 odd, I would say, probably.
Well,
yeah. My ambition is to get a translation in Cherokee. That's one that I've had. And also, Hebrew. I haven't been translated in Cherokee or Hebrew. I would like those.
Yes.
For your collection.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Then you'd have to go and sort of do a talk or visit them.
Or Korean. I'd like to have a South Korean translation so that I can go to South Korea, and also Japan. So if you're watching, Korean and Japanese publishers.
Okay. And so they were quite general questions. A more specific question about the way you write. When I read your books, I wonder how you balance serious and often even tragic elements with a comic voice, with the comic. Where's the balance between those things?
Well, I find that I have naturally always used comedy as a way of sort of processing things. So it's always come quite naturally to me to mix dark issues with humour. And I think it goes back to being quite young, when my bonkers dysfunctional family were being more bonkers and dysfunctional than usual. I used to write little sort of sketches about us all for my sisters, and we all used to sit around and cry with laughter, but it wasn't really funny at all. And when I wrote my first novel, it's got quite a serious, bleak sort of mental health strand through it. But I think it sort of works, because however bad anything is, there is black humour in everything. And I have always sort of dealt with stuff by saying to myself, I will laugh about this one day, or at least it will make a decent story, over a bottle of wine. And so I don't find it difficult to write what is essentially billed as a romantic comedy, but have something like breast cancer in it, which my last book did have, or, as I say, mental health problems, or bereavement, or whatever. I think they can sit together.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why, exactly what Jane is saying, is why I've always sort of objected to the kind of diminutive terms like chick lit or women's fiction, because if you get some really very fine male writers writing a blend of drama and comedy, then it suddenly becomes important literature. But when women do it, it has to be kind of subcategorized somehow. But for me, the fictions that I enjoy reading always do blend the darkness and the light with a really fine balance, and that's always been the kind of novels that I've wanted to write. So from the very beginning, back in the chick lit days, there's always been a darker or a more emotional issue at the core of the book, and paired with lighter comedy, romance, and sometimes even not any romance. I know, because the book, it can be about love, but it doesn't have to be about romantic love. And I quite often write about the love between friends, or love for a mother for her children, and vice versa as well.
And I think that it reflects life. I mean, in life you have very dark moments, and you have to, and you have very comic moments. I don't think I really think about it too much when I'm writing. It kind of happens quite naturally that, yes, there are some very deep issues. Yes, there's some personal conflicts. And yes, there are some moments that, as in life, that you giggle at, and that's how you get through, as Jane said, how you often get through situations, how you often, it's a sort of defense mechanism. It's also a release for the author, for the reader as well. If something's been very, very tense for a long while, then you need a release to, in laughter. So I think that's also important. But I think, like Rowan says, I don't think you should be, I think it's not categorized, is it? Just sort of, it just happens.
Yeah. But it's true. The first book I read of Rowan's was The Accidental Mother, which I think I bought at an airport. And then for like years after that, I'd write your name on a Post-it, and I went to W.H. Smith's to see if there was a new book. But so on my Post-it, and you weren't very well known at the time. I think it was the beginning, and that's a very tragic story with a kind of chick lit tone. So that's kind of,
yes, there's a tragic story with a lot of it's about a young woman who her best friend is killed, and she finds out that when she sort of laughingly agreed to be the guardian of her friend's children, years before. Her friend
Before
actually
they had children.
written into law. So she ends up, this young city woman ends up with 2 small children to look after. And of course there's a lot of comedy in that. Of course there is. Somebody who's
very
not
funny book.
caring for children. And also there's a lot of grief to young children who don't have their mother anymore. So it is that sort of blending of the circumstance, the situation comedy and the emotional undertone.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. And Lessons in Laughing Out Loud. I cry every time. And I think I've listened to it twice and read it once, and I still cry. In fact, I cry more each time. And then I laugh.
Excellent. That's good. I'm always happy to make people cry and laugh.
Nice. I don't know how much time we have. I was going to ask about your writing process, whether you plan books before you start writing, whether everything's very set out, or whether you all let your characters lead. Are you a plotter or a pantser, Janie?
I'm a bit of both, actually. I do have an idea in my head, and I do have the plot. I'm very much driven. I let the characters drive it, and I have so the plot's a kind of safety net. I know exactly. I sort of know where it's going, but it's not rigid. It's very, very flexible, so that unexpected things can and quite frequently do take place. So,
Jane.
I have plotted more as time has gone on, because I used to be quite chaotic. I just had an idea for the beginning and a few things that might happen in the middle and an end. Whereas now I do try and make like a sort of a rough chapter plan. Even if I don't keep to it, I have a plan of like with a sentence about what's going to happen. Mainly because a couple of books ago when I wrote Mum in the Middle, it ended up at 123,000 words, and I had to cut 23,000 words out of it. And I was like, oh, I've done all that writing and now I've got to cut it. And actually it was a good lesson, because I was able to cut it without losing any of the essence of the book. It made it a better book. But I was so sort of, I don't want to waste my time, that the next book, I had like 30 chapters of 3,000 words. It was going to be exactly 90,000 words. And I think it ended up a bit short, that one. So I had to go back and put it in. So I do sort of now, as I say, have a route map. Yeah.
Yeah, I am quite a plotter. I have a plot at the beginning, a loose plot, like Janie will say, and then I'll write a very, very quick first draft. So it usually be very short, like 50, 60,000 words. And then when I've got the first draft down, I start kind of plotting it in more detail, probably. So that's, you can see behind me, that's the plot of one of my books there in Post-it notes, color coordinated, because then I can work out what's missing and what needs cutting and where certain scenes need to go in order to sort of keep up the pace and rise and fall of action and all that sort of thing.
Oh, it's interesting. Oh, sorry, that's my phone going in the background. I apologise.
We've had all the calls today.
I don't know. Do you write in several genres? Or we talked about it a little bit at the beginning. I know Rowan does, but do you think it's difficult to move from one genre to another? It's a bit difficult for Janie to answer this one, I'm sorry. But Jane, you've changed.
Well, my genre, as I say, has just sort of got a bit older, really. The heroines and the children have sort of grown up with me and my child. I have been contemporary women's fiction all the way through. It's got sort of called different things at different times. I haven't actually branched out and tried to do something else.
Yeah. No thrillers.
No, I have a sort of idea at the back of my head for a psychological thriller, but I'll probably never write it.
I just love writing stories, so I try lots of different genres. I mean, I've written in lots of different genres. I think contemporary women's fiction is my sort of mainstay, but last year or the year before, I started to write mid-19th century detective novels starring the Bronte sisters, to be published in France next year. And I have written teenage fiction, fiction for children, very classic rom-coms under the name Scarlett Bailey. So yeah, I'm always up for trying on a new genre, just because I like writing. I just love writing, so I don't really mind what kind of writing I do.
You're so prolific. How many books have you written altogether now?
It's something approaching 50, I think.
Wow.
And you're only
But I'm very
35.
scared of being able to pay the mortgage, so fear is a wonderful motivator.
Certainly is.
So to finish, would you like to introduce one of your books or some of your books to us, Janie?
Sure, I'd love to.
So our French readers.
This is Les Copines d'Abord, which is out in France at the moment.
Love that cover.
I know, it's so bright, it's fantastic. And this is going to be available in supermarkets from May, but it's available in all bookshops. And this is the story of a quintessential English village in danger of losing its identity, community, a San Francisco drag club in danger of going bankrupt. Not a lot that you think they have in common at first, but they have a lot in common, and it's what happens when their two worlds collide. I don't know what the French title for this is going to be, but
it's brilliant.
Sky's the limit. And France in, I think October. It takes a journey from Marrakesh to southwest France. Write about what you know. And the chateau actually is about 20 minutes from where we live, where it takes place. There's romance, there's a little bit of magic, there's a hint of mystery and a wine scam, which I was told from one of our friends who's a winemaker here. So yeah, there we go, quite a lot. Fantastic, there we go, that's me.
I love that one. Really, that made me cry too a little bit at the end.
Oh, good.
Tears. This was cute at the end. Okay, Jane.
Well, I'm going to show you the cover of my next book, which is actually not published yet, but it's coming out at the end of May. And it's called Old Enough to Know Better. And I said to you at the beginning that I tend to write what I know. Well, my husband is 24 years older than me, and it's actually the same age gap as Boris Johnson, his partner. So I'm hoping at the time to write some articles giving him some advice. But anyway, that's coming out, and it's about age gap marriages. And you know what happens over a marriage. You know, it might be terribly glamorous when you're 25 and he's 49, but what happens when you're a vibrant 60-year-old and he's 84? As I say, it's not out yet, but you can pre-order it from all the usual channels, or if you want to get one right now, my last book was called The Big 50, and that's about having a big birthday.
Yeah, I bought that for myself.
Me next week.
Ooh.
I'm 50 next week.
Wow.
I'm telling everybody in case they want to buy me a present.
14.
Right. This is the French edition of the memory book, which has been out in France for a couple of years, I think now, but has slowly gained readership, which has been really lovely, and that has led to this French edition of We Are All Made of Stars.
Oh, I love that.
So this is about Claire, who has early onset Alzheimer's. She's in her 40s with a daughter who's 19 and a daughter from her second marriage who is, I think, about 5. And it's her trying to navigate through her life as the disease takes over, and she starts to lose more and more pieces of her memory. And really it's about how love, romantic and family love, kind of persists even in the darkest circumstances.
And I always say
and
to
this
readers,
is,
it's happy. It's not a sad.
it
it's
is a
not
happy book.
tragic,
It is, yeah.
It's a happy book talking about love. And there's so much love in the story.
Yeah. And well, this is about Stella, who is a night nurse at a hospice. And again, this is a book that really does sort of look mortality in the eye, and really does sort of go there and think about what it's like to live with the life-limiting disease, and also to lose somebody that you care about very much. And it features a series of last letters from people who know that they're going to die, that they write to their loved ones, or in one case to their neighbour that they hate. So again, it's kind of it's quite emotional novel, but again, it's a novel I think that's full of light and happiness and optimism as well. And then next year, I haven't got a French cover for it yet, but my Bronte mysteries will be out in French as well. Hooray!
Lovely.
Bronte sisters solve mysteries.
Ah. Wow, so lots of things happening in France. And soon Jane too. So
I know, it's great. I feel extra sophisticated.
you are sophisticated. Well, thank you very much, ladies,
Thank
for
you.
coming
Thank
to
you.
talk to our French. Would you like to say anything in French to our readers?
Bonsoir. Bon courage.
Au revoir.
Okay.
Merci.
Merci.
How do